back. You have been told that healing means becoming softer, more open, more available to the world and the people in it than you were when the wounds were fresh. That is not what healing actually produces. And the gap between what you were told and what genuine healing creates is the most important truth about the empath's journey that almost no one is honest enough to deliver. What a healed empath becomes is not the perfected version of what they were before the work began, not the more functional, more bounded, more spiritually polished variation of the person who absorbed everything, gave everything, lost themselves in everything, not the person who learned to manage their sensitivity more skillfully while remaining fundamentally organized around the same wound that made the sensitivity painful in the first place. What a healed empath becomes is something the people who knew them before often do not recognize, something quieter and more powerful than the pre-healing version, something that carries the same depth and the same capacity for genuine feeling, but from a completely different foundation, not from the wound, from the self. And here is the brutal truth that this entire script, back, is built around. Most people who identify as empaths are not healing. They are managing. There is an enormous and consequential difference between those two things. Managing means developing better strategies for surviving the same fundamental orientation, the same wound-based openness, the same compulsive giving, the same structural self-abandonment dressed in increasingly sophisticated spiritual language. Healing means something actually changes at the foundation. The orientation itself shifts. The wound that was generating the pattern gets genuinely addressed rather than perpetually accommodated. And when that shift happens, when healing rather than management is what has actually occurred, what emerges is not what the empath expected, not what the spiritual community around them described, not the warm, luminous, perpetually compassionate version of themselves they were working toward. Something realer than that, more grounded, more specific, more honestly themselves than any version that was organized around someone else's needs. What a healed empath actually becomes will challenge everything you have been calling your gift. Stay with this. The truth here is worth the discomfort, of receiving it. Before you can understand what the healed empath becomes, you have to understand what the healing process actually takes apart. Because the popular narrative of empath healing focuses almost entirely on what is added the boundaries, the self-care practices, the spiritual tools, the growing capacity to protect your energy. It almost never addresses what is removed, what has to be genuinely, permanently released for the healing to be real rather than cosmetic. The first thing genuine healing dismantles is the identity organized around being the one who feels everything. This is harder to release than any boundary, because the sensitivity, the extraordinary, genuine, deeply real capacity to feel at depth has not just been an experience. It has been the story of who you are, the framework through which you have understood your place in the world, your value in relationships, your sense of purpose. The specific, interior narrative of someone whose depth of feeling is the most essential and most defining thing about them. Genuine healing does not preserve this identity in a healthier form. It dismantles it. Not the sensitivity itself, the sensitivity remains, and pens and becomes more precise with healing rather than less. But the identity built around it, the specific self-concept of someone who is valuable primarily because of how deeply they feel and how much of that feeling they direct toward others. When that identity dissolves, and it has to dissolve for genuine healing to occur, what the empath encounters is a specific and deeply disorienting emptiness. The question that identity was answering was, who am I, if not the one who feels everything for everyone? And the healing process does not answer that question quickly or cleanly. It sits with the empath in the emptiness of it, until something genuine emerges from beneath the constructed identity. The second thing genuine healing dismantles is the belief that depth of feeling constitutes a form of service. The unhealed empath moves through the world with an implicit spiritual framework, often unconscious, rarely directly examined, in which their capacity for feeling is itself a contribution, in which absorbing other people's pain is a form of helping, in which remaining emotionally available to everyone who presents a need is the expression of a higher purpose. This framework is not entirely wrong. The capacity for deep feeling can be genuinely healing for others. The presence of someone who can truly witness pain without flinching is genuinely rare and genuinely valuable. But in the unhealed empath, this framework has a shadow function. It justifies the self-abandonment. It makes the giving without receiving spiritually noble rather than psychologically problematic. It transforms the wound, the specific, early formed belief that love is earned through service, that worth is located in usefulness, into a virtue, into the calling. Genuine healing sees through this, not to cynicism about the gift, but to the honest recognition of when the gift is being expressed from genuine abundance and when it is being used as the spiritual rationale for continuing to not choose oneself. The healed empath does not stop feeling deeply. They stop using feeling deeply as a reason to abandon themselves. That distinction, seemingly small, actually enormous, changes everything that follows. Here is what is not in the popular description of the healed empath. The qualities that the healing process actually produces, not the ones the spiritual community tends to celebrate, but the ones that genuinely emerge when the wound-based orientation is replaced by something built from genuine self-knowledge. The first unexpected quality is discernment that has no apology in it. The unhealed empath's compassion is often indiscriminate. Not from stupidity, they frequently know, on some level, that a situation is not genuinely reciprocal or that a person is not genuinely invested. But the wound-based orientation overrides the knowing. The compulsion to give, to understand, to remain available, it is stronger than the accurate perception. The healed empath's discernment does not have that override. They feel what they feel with the same depth as before, but the feeling no longer automatically translates into availability. They can feel genuine compassion for someone's pain and simultaneously hold a clear, unhurried, completely unapologetic assessment of whether engaging with that pain serves anything real for the person in pain, for themselves, for the genuine work they are here to do. This discernment looks, from the outside, like coldness, like the empath has lost something. What has actually happened is that the automatic override is gone. The compassion is still there, back. It is now being directed with intelligence rather than compulsion. The second unexpected quality is comfort with being misunderstood. The unhealed empath has an often unexamined but deeply powerful need to be understood, to be seen accurately, to have their intentions recognized and their depth received and their genuine caring acknowledged by the people they invest in. This need drives enormous amounts of energy, the over-explaining, the continued engagement with people who consistently misread them, the specific grief of the empath who cannot stop trying to make someone understand what they meant. The healed empath carries something different. Not indifference to being seen. Genuine connection still matters. Genuine understanding still nourishes. But a specific, grounded comfort with the reality that not everyone has the capacity to see clearly, that misreading is frequently a limitation of the observer rather than a failure of the observed, and that their own clear sense of who they are does not require external confirmation to remain intact. They have become the source of their own witness, and that self-witnessing is so genuinely established that the absence of external why, back, tenessing while perhaps still felt no longer produces the specific, destabilizing grief of someone whose sense of self depends on being accurately seen by others. The third unexpected quality is the capacity for genuine solitude without loneliness. The unhealed empath's relationship with solitude is complicated. They need it desperately, regularly, as the only available recovery from the continuous absorption that their orientation produces. But they often experience it with a specific loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone and everything to do with the wound that the solitude exposes. The wound that asks, in the quiet, whether they matter when they are not being useful, whether they exist fully when no one needs them. The healed empath inhabits solitude differently, as home, as the specific, nourishing, genuinely desired space of someone who has developed a rich and sustaining interior life that does not require external company to be alive. The solitude is not recovery from the world. It is where they most fully inhabit themselves. This is not isolation. It is sovereignty. And sovereignty looks nothing like what the wound-based version of empath identity was originally. Back, nizing itself toward the most visible change in the healed empath's life, the change that other people notice before they notice anything else, is the change in the quality and the composition of their relationships. Not the number, the quality. The unhealed empath's relational world is often populated by a specific imbalance, a concentration of people who need significantly more than they give, who require the empath's continuous emotional availability as a structural feature of the relationship, whose growth and stability depend in part on the empath's willingness to remain in the giving position indefinitely. These relationships are not always conscious arrangements. They are the natural result of an empath whose wound-based openness attracts with remarkable consistency people whose own wounds make them drawn to exactly the kind of boundless, non-reciprocal emotional availability the unhealed empath provides. When the healing occurs, when the wound-based openness is replaced by the grounded, discerning, genuinely self-respecting presence of someone who has chosen themselves, the relational landscape shifts. Some people leave, not dramatically, simply by finding that the back dynamic they depended on is no longer available. The empath's presence is still warm, still genuinely caring, but it is no longer organized around their management. It no longer provides the specific, continuous, unconditional availability that was the structural feature of the old arrangement. And without that feature, the arrangement itself has no foundation. Their leaving is not a loss, it is clarification. The relationship was with the wound's availability, not with the person. What replaces it slowly, selectively, with the specific quality of something that could only arrive in the space the old arrangements were occupying, is genuinely different. Connection between two whole people, not the merger of the unhealed empath's openness with another person's need, not the dynamic where one person is consistently the giver and the other the receiver. Two people who bring their full selves, including their wounds, their complexity, their imperfections, and who meet each other there, who give and receive with the natural, unforced reciprocity of people who are genuinely present with each other rather than managing each other. The healed empath discovers something in these relationships, back, on ships, that the wound-based connections, however intense and however genuinely felt, never produced. The experience of being genuinely known, not just felt, known. Seen in the full, unhurried, nothing hidden way that is only possible between two people whose presence with each other is not being filtered through a wound that needs managing. This is what the healing was always building toward, not better boundaries. This genuine meeting between the full version of you and the full version of another. Here is the final truth that everything in this script has been moving toward, and it requires the specific quality of honesty that most healing content avoids because avoiding it is more comfortable for everyone involved. The healed empath is not more loving than the unhealed one. In the ordinary, visible, easily observed sense of love as continuous availability and emotional generosity and the willingness to give endlessly, the healed empath gives less, to more people, with less intensity, with less of the consuming, self-sacrificing quality that the wound-based version of empath love produced. But in the deeper sense, the sense that matters, the sense that produces something real, back. In the people who receive it, the healed empath's love is more genuine than anything the wound-based version ever provided, because it comes from abundance rather than from compulsion, from genuine choice rather than from the inability to do otherwise, from the specific, irreplaceable quality of someone who is fully present, not managing their own pain by disappearing into someone else's, not giving as a means of earning worth, not loving as a strategy for avoiding the specific interior emptiness that the giving was always temporarily filling. From here, from the genuine self, from the person who finally, after everything, chose themselves enough to have something real to give. Here is what this moment demands of you, not reflection, decision. The healing that is available to you is not available in the future when conditions are better. It is available now in the specific, interior, entirely private territory of this moment and the next and the one after that. In the daily, unglamorous, entirely uncommanded choice to attend to your own interior with the same quality of presence you have been giving everyone else. Ask yourself with the specific, uncomfortably honest quality, back, of someone who is genuinely ready to receive the answer, where in your life right now are you managing rather than healing? Where are you using the empath identity, the spiritual language, the framework of sensitivity and depth as the sophisticated justification for continuing to not choose yourself, not the dramatic answer, the quiet one, the specific, private, already known but not yet admitted answer that has been waiting for you to stop explaining it away? That is where the healing begins. Not in the practices you add, in the honest seeing of what the wound has been producing and the specific, daily, behavioral commitment to responding to your own interior with the care you have been directing outward for years. Your sensitivity is not the wound. Your depth is not the wound. Your capacity for genuine feeling is not the wound. The wound is the belief installed, before you could question it, that those gifts were only valuable when they were in service of someone else, that your interior life mattered primarily as a resource for other people's healing, that you were most yourself when you were most available. The healed empath knows differently. They know that their sensitivity, back, Vidi is most powerful when it is genuinely their own, when it is directed with intention rather than dispersed through compulsion. That their depth produces something real when it is grounded in genuine self-knowledge rather than organized around other people's needs. That their capacity for feeling is a gift to the world when it comes from a person who has first given it to themselves. You were never meant to pour yourself out until nothing remained. You were meant to become so genuinely, fully, unapologetically yourself that what overflows from that becoming nourishes everything it touches. Not because you gave more, because what you gave was finally, completely real. The healed empath does not disappear into service. They arrive fully, specifically, without apology into their own life. And from that arrival, from the specific, grounded, genuine wholeness of someone who has done the actual work, they offer the world something it has always needed, far more than another wounded healer's endless giving. A living example of what it looks like to be genuinely, completely, irreversibly whole. That is what you are becoming. Not softer, not more available, not the perfected version. Back, N of the person who gave everything. Real, grounded, genuinely yours. Finally, completely, without one more moment of apology yourself.